Ethan Miller? Yeah, I think about him every night. The words slipped through the gap between two rows of metal lockers and hit Ethan so hard he forgot how to breathe. For one frozen second, the whole gym seemed to disappear. The buzzing fluorescent lights, the distant thud of dumbbells being re-racked, the squeak of sneakers on rubber flooring, even the warm steam curling from the showers behind him. All that remained was Ryan Carter's voice, low and unmistakable, saying Ethan's name like it belonged to some secret he had no right to hear. Ethan stood barefoot on the cool tile, one hand gripping a damp white towel, the other pressed against the small scent blocker on his wrist. The adhesive had started to peel from the sweat of his workout, and panic was already crawling under his skin before Ryan's sentence reached him. He had come to Atlas Fitness late on purpose, after most of the college crowd had cleared out, after the loudest alphas had finished flexing in the mirrors and joking like the whole building belonged to them. Ethan was 21, 5'8", pale-skinned, soft-featured, and tired of being treated like something fragile. An omega in a gym full of alphas learned quickly how to take up less space. He wore oversized hoodies, kept his eyes down, lifted lighter weights than he wanted, and smiled like every careless comment did not land somewhere deep. But he still came back, night after night, because some stubborn part of him wanted to prove he could stay. Ryan was the reason staying had become a little easier. Ryan Carter was 6'2", broad-shouldered, blonde in that effortless all-American way, with gray-blue eyes that made people straighten when he looked at them. He was the kind of alpha other alphas listened to without being told. He had never mocked Ethan's form, never laughed when Ethan struggled with the bar, never made him feel small for asking how to adjust a machine. Instead, Ryan would step beside him, calm and careful, and say things like, "Lock your elbows less," or "Breathe before the lift," or "You've got more strength than you think." Ethan had told himself it was nothing. Gym bro kindness. Basic decency. Nothing more. Then, tonight, after a long set that left his arms shaking, Ethan had walked into the locker room and heard Ryan come in with 3 other guys from the weight floor. Ethan had been hidden behind the last row of lockers, tugging his hoodie over his head, when one of them laughed and said, "Come on, Carter. You're always watching Miller. What's the deal?" Ethan had gone still. Ryan had not answered right away, and that silence hurt worse than a joke. Then came the sentence. "Ethan Miller? Yeah, I think about him every night." The room erupted in laughter, loud and sharp, and Ethan felt his face burn. His fingers tightened around the towel until his knuckles went white. He told himself to move, to leave before anyone noticed him, but his feet would not obey. Then another voice said, "So what? You feel bad for him? He looks like he'd snap in half carrying a gallon of milk." More laughter. Ethan's throat tightened. The scent blocker on his wrist loosened another fraction, and a faint trace of his natural scent slipped into the humid air, clean and soft like snow melting on cotton. He pressed his palm over it, terrified. Then Ryan spoke again, and this time his voice changed everything. Ryan did not laugh. The change in him was so quiet that it made the whole locker room feel smaller. The easy noise from the other alphas faded first. Then the dull hum of the overhead lights seemed to grow louder, buzzing above the rows of dinted gray lockers like nervous insects. Ethan held himself perfectly still behind the last row, palm pressed hard over his wrist, his heartbeat kicking against his ribs as if it wanted out. For a moment, he wished Ryan would just leave it there, let the joke die, let Ethan escape with the hurt hidden under his hoodie. But Ryan was not finished. "Someone like him should not be in a place like this," Ryan said, each word flat and controlled. Ethan felt the sentence open inside him like a cold door. Of course, that was what Ryan thought. Ethan was too small, too careful, too obviously out of place no matter how many blockers he wore or how much weight he forced himself to lift. He lowered his head, blinking fast, ashamed that he had ever mistaken patience for kindness. Then one of the guys snorted and said, "Exactly. He looks lost every time he touches a barbell." Ryan moved. Ethan could not see much through the narrow gap between locker doors. Only the edge of Ryan's black training shoes and the shadow of his tall frame shifting across the tile. But the room reacted to him instantly. The laughter stopped. A locker door clicked shut with a sharp metallic sound. "No," Ryan said, and this time his voice carried a colder weight. "That is not what I meant." Silence followed. Ethan stopped breathing again. Ryan continued, slower now, like he wanted every person in that room to understand him. He should not have to work out in a room full of idiots who think strength means being loud. He shows up alone. He trains even when he is nervous. He listens. He learns. He does not make excuses. Ethan Miller has more discipline than half the men in this gym. Heat rose behind Ethan's eyes, sudden and painful. His hand slipped from his wrist. The scent blocker peeled free and dropped soundlessly against his palm. A faint current of his omega scent drifted into the damp air, soft and clean, and Ethan felt panic rush back, so quickly his knees nearly weakened. He fumbled to press the blocker down again, but his fingers were shaking too badly. Another alpha inhaled, confused. "Wait," he muttered. "Do you smell that?" Ethan stepped backward. His heel bumped a metal bench. The small sound cracked through the locker room like a warning bell. Every head turned. Through the gap, Ethan saw Ryan go completely still. Then Ryan looked toward the last row of lockers, and their eyes met. Ethan had never seen Ryan look like that before. Not embarrassed. Not angry at being overheard. He looked worried, deeply and immediately worried, as if the only thing in the room that mattered was how quickly Ethan could find air. Ethan tried to speak, but nothing came out. His hoodie was twisted in one hand, his towel in the other, his pale face burning with humiliation. The other alphas looked from Ryan to Ethan, understanding arriving in pieces. The broken blocker, the hidden corner, the trembling hands. Someone took one step forward, curiosity written all over his face, and Ryan moved between them without raising his voice. "Stay where you are," Ryan said. It was not loud. It did not need to be. The alpha stopped. Ryan did not touch Ethan. He did not crowd him. He simply stood a few feet away, broad shoulders blocking the room from view, his scent calm and steady beneath the steam and soap. "Ethan," he said, softer now, "look at me. Just breathe." Ethan wanted to run. He wanted to disappear. But Ryan's voice wrapped around the panic like a hand closing gently over a shaking flame, and for one impossible second, Ethan believed him. The room obeyed Ryan before anyone admitted they had. No one moved closer. No one laughed again. The alpha who had taken that curious step slowly looked away, as if the floor tiles had suddenly become the most interesting thing in the building. Ethan kept his eyes locked on Ryan because looking anywhere else felt impossible. The rows of lockers had turned into silver walls around him, reflecting pieces of his shame from every angle. His hoodie hung twisted in his fist. His scent blocker lay half attached to his wrist, useless now, and the air between them carried the truth he had spent years trying to hide. Ryan noticed the way Ethan tried to cover it, and something in his expression softened. "Do not touch the blocker yet," Ryan said gently. "Your hands are shaking too much. You might tear the skin." Ethan hated that Ryan had noticed that too. He hated that Ryan saw every small weakness, every tremor, every breath that came too fast. But Ryan did not look disgusted. He did not look triumphant. He looked like he was standing in front of a frightened animal and trying not to become another reason it ran. "Everybody out," Ryan said, still watching Ethan. One of the guys gave a nervous laugh. "Come on, Carter, we were just messing around." Ryan turned his head only slightly. The whole temperature of the room seemed to drop. "Out." That single word had more authority than a shout. Locker doors opened and closed in awkward silence. Sneakers scraped against tile. Bags were lifted from benches. No one protested again. One by one, the others left through the main door, their voices dying in the hallway beyond, until the locker room held only the hum of lights, the hiss of distant showers, and Ethan's uneven breathing. Ryan waited until the door swung shut. Even then, he did not move closer. "I am sorry," he said. Ethan swallowed, but his throat felt dry. For what part? The question came out smaller than he wanted. Ryan's jaw tightened. "For letting them say your name like that. For not stopping it sooner. For making you hear half a sentence before the rest of it." Ethan let out a shaky laugh that was not really a laugh at all. "You said you think about me every night." Ryan did not deny it. That was the worst part. Or maybe the best. Ethan could not tell anymore. Ryan looked down for one brief second, then back up again. "I do." The words landed softly, but they shook Ethan harder than the laughter had. He took a step back, bumping the bench again. "Do not say things like that because you feel bad for me. I do not feel bad for you. Everyone feels bad for me." Ethan's voice cracked, and the sound embarrassed him so much he looked away. I am the quiet omega who pretends he is not scared. I am the guy who wears blockers to lift 20-pound dumbbells beside alphas who could lift me with one hand. I know what I look like in here. Ryan's face changed at that, pain moving through his eyes before he controlled it. You look brave. Ethan froze. Ryan continued, quiet and steady. You walk into a place that makes you uncomfortable, and you stay. You learn. You try again even when your hands are shaking. That is not weakness, Ethan. That is the kind of strength most people in this room would not understand if it stood right in front of them. Ethan wanted to believe him so badly that it scared him. His chest tightened. The broken blocker slipped from his wrist and fell to the floor between them. Neither of them moved at first. Then Ryan slowly crouched, not stepping closer, simply lowering himself until he could pick it up without crowding Ethan. He held it in his open palm like something delicate. May I help you put this back on? He asked. No alpha had ever asked Ethan before. They commanded, assumed, crowded, decided. Ryan asked. Ethan stared at him, at the careful distance, at the open hand, at the calm patience that made the locker room feel less like a trap. His voice barely rose above a whisper. Why are you being like this? Ryan looked at him as if the answer had been waiting in his chest for a long time. Because I know what it feels like to hide something important and hope nobody notices. Ethan stared at Ryan's open palm, at the small beige patch resting there like the most dangerous secret in the world, and for a few seconds he could not answer. The locker room felt too quiet now. Without the laughter, without the other alphas filling the air with noise and careless confidence, there was only Ryan breathing steadily in front of him and Ethan trying to decide whether trust was a door or a cliff. What do you hide? Ethan asked, his voice barely steady enough to exist. Ryan's hand closed gently around the blocker, not to take it away, only to protect it from slipping. He looked past Ethan for a moment, toward the mirror above the sinks, where both of their reflections appeared broken by steam and fluorescent light. Control, Ryan said. Everyone thinks I was born calm because I am an alpha. They think it is easy for me to walk into a room and make people listen. They do not see the part where I spend every day measuring my tone, my posture, my scent, everything, so nobody decides I am too much. Ethan blinked. That was not the answer he expected. Ryan gave a faint, humorless smile. My father used to say an alpha should never hesitate. My coach says the same thing. Half the guys out there say it without words every time they slam a weight down like the floor owes them respect. But I hate it, Ethan. I hate the idea that being strong means making everyone around you smaller. The words moved through Ethan slowly, warming places he had kept cold on purpose. He had built Ryan in his mind as something untouchable, all confidence and clean lines, the kind of alpha who had never doubted where he belonged. Seeing the crack beneath that image made him feel unsteady in a different way. Not afraid. Not exactly. Seen. Ryan shifted the blocker in his palm. I noticed yours was peeling. Last week, he said. Ethan's face flushed. You noticed that? I noticed you leaving early. I noticed you avoiding the crowded hours. I noticed you standing near the exit every time the room got loud. That sounds creepy, Ethan said, but there was no real anger in it. Ryan lowered his eyes, accepting the hit. Maybe. I am sorry. I told myself I was only making sure nobody bothered you. But the truth is, I wanted to be near you, and I did not know how to say that without making your life harder. Ethan looked down at his wrist, where a faint red mark showed from the adhesive. He hated how vulnerable it made him feel, but Ryan's words kept returning to him. I wanted to be near you. The locker room door creaked softly in the distance, and Ethan flinched before he could stop himself. Ryan noticed immediately. We should get you out of here, he said. There is a staff hallway behind the spin room. It is quieter. Ethan hesitated. What about everyone outside? They can wait. Ryan stood slowly, still careful not to crowd him, and held out the blocker. You can put it on yourself, or I can help. Your choice. That choice almost broke something open in Ethan. No pressure. No command. No alpha certainty pretending to be kindness. Just a choice placed gently between them. Ethan took one careful step forward and offered his wrist. Ryan's fingers were warm, but his touch was feather-light as he smoothed the patch back into place, then pressed the edges down with a strip of white athletic tape from his gym bag. He did it like he was wrapping a sprain, practical and respectful, but Ethan still felt the moment settle in his chest like a held breath. When Ryan finished, he stepped back first. There, he said. You are covered. Ethan looked at him, heart still racing. Am I? Ryan's eyes softened. From them, yes. From me, you never had to be. Ryan led Ethan out through the side door of the locker room. Not in front like he was dragging him away, and not behind like he was guarding a prisoner, but beside him, close enough to steady the air without touching. The hallway behind the spin studio was narrow and dim, lit by a single emergency strip that painted the walls a soft red. On the other side of the closed door, the main gym still carried its usual nighttime rhythm, weights clicking into racks, treadmills humming, a distant voice calling out a final set. But back here the noise became muffled, as if the world had been wrapped in cotton. Ethan leaned against the cinder block wall and pulled his hoodie over his head with shaking hands. The familiar weight of the fabric should have helped. It usually did. It made him look ordinary, anonymous, just another college guy leaving a workout too tired to talk. But nothing about him felt ordinary now. Ryan had heard his breathing break. Ryan had seen the blocker fall. Ryan had stood between him and an entire room without making it look like a performance. Ethan did not know what to do with that kind of care. Do you need water? Ryan asked. Ethan shook his head, then realized his throat was too tight to lie properly. Maybe. Ryan opened his gym bag and took out a sealed bottle, twisting the cap loose before handing it over so Ethan would not have to fight with it. The tiny gesture nearly undid him. Ethan drank too fast, coughed once, and looked away in embarrassment. Ryan did not comment. He only waited, patient in a way that made silence feel less like punishment. They all know now, Ethan said. Not all, Ryan answered. The guys in there know enough to keep their mouths shut. Ethan let out a bitter breath. That is supposed to make me feel better? No, it is supposed to be true. Ryan leaned against the opposite wall, leaving several feet between them. In the red hallway light, he looked less like the untouchable alpha from the weight floor and more like a tired 23-year-old man who had been holding himself still for too long. I cannot erase what happened, he said. I wish I could, but I can make sure nobody turns it into a story that belongs to them. Ethan looked down at the athletic tape around his wrist. It was clean, white, practical, wrapped with almost medical neatness. Why does it matter to you so much? Ryan was quiet for a long moment. Beyond the wall, someone laughed near the front desk, and Ethan flinched before he could stop himself. Ryan's eyes followed the movement, softening with something that looked dangerously close to hurt. Because the first time I saw you, Ryan said, you were standing under the pull-up bar, staring at it like it was a mountain. Everyone else walked past you. Some people smirked. You still jumped, missed, landed, and tried again. For times. Ethan remembered that night. He had gone home with sore arms and shame burning behind his eyes. I failed. You came back the next day. Ryan's voice was firm, but gentle. That is what I remembered. Ethan's chest tightened. He had spent so long measuring himself by what he could not lift, what he could not hide, what he could not become, that hearing Ryan measure him by his return felt almost impossible. I thought you were just being nice, Ethan whispered. Ryan's gaze held his. I tried to be just nice. The air changed, not heavier, not unsafe, but more honest. Ethan gripped the water bottle with both hands. And now, Ryan looked toward the closed door leading back to the gym, then back at Ethan, choosing every word carefully. Now I am asking whether you will let me walk you to your car. Not because you are weak. Because nobody should have to leave alone after a night like this. Ethan should have said no. He should have protected what little pride he had left. Instead, he nodded once. Ryan pushed away from the wall and opened the back exit, letting in a sweep of cool California night air. Outside, the parking lot lights glowed gold on the asphalt, and for the first time all evening, Ethan could breathe without forcing himself. The night outside Atlas Fitness felt almost unreal after the heat of the locker room. Cool air moved across Ethan's face, carrying the smell of asphalt, eucalyptus trees from the edge of the lot, and the faint salt of the ocean somewhere beyond the college town lights. He walked beside Ryan in silence, his sneakers whispering over the pavement, his fingers still curled around the half-empty water bottle. The parking lot was not crowded, but every sound made him glance up. A car door closing near the entrance, two students laughing by a pickup truck, the distant beep of someone unlocking a sedan. Each small noise pulled his nerves tight again, as if the locker room could spill out after him at any second. Ryan noticed, of course he did, but he did not tell Ethan to calm down. He simply slowed his steps until Ethan could match him without feeling chased. That should not have meant so much. It did. Ethan's old blue Honda Civic was parked near the far end of the lot under a flickering light. He had chosen the space because it was quiet when he arrived, but now it looked lonely, a little island of shadow between painted white lines. He stopped beside the driver's door and fumbled for his keys. They slipped once in his damp hand and hit the pavement with a small metallic clatter. Before Ryan could move, Ethan crouched quickly and grabbed them himself. "I have it," he said too fast. Ryan lifted both hands slightly, palms open. "I know." The answer made Ethan feel foolish and relieved at the same time. He leaned back against the car, staring down at the keys cutting into his palm. "I hate this," he admitted. "I hate that one stupid piece of adhesive can decide whether people treat me like a person or a problem." Ryan's expression tightened, but his voice stayed gentle. "You are not a problem." Ethan laughed under his breath, tired and raw. "You keep saying things like they are simple. They should be. But they are not." Ethan looked up then, and the words came faster, pushed out by everything he had swallowed for years. "I do not want every alpha in a room to know what I am before they know my name. I do not want people lowering their voices around me or acting like I need permission to take up space. I joined that gym because I wanted to feel stronger, but every night I leave feeling like I am pretending to be someone who has a right to stand there." Ryan did not interrupt. He stood with the golden parking lot light behind him, his gym bag hanging from one shoulder, his face open in a way Ethan had never seen on the weight floor. "You have that right," Ryan said. "With or without blockers. With or without anyone standing next to you." Ethan pressed the heel of his hand against his eye, refusing to let the tears fall. "Then why? Did it feel easier when you stood there?" The question slipped out before he could stop it. The air between them changed again, quiet and electric, not frightening, but impossible to ignore. Ryan looked at him for a long moment. "Because sometimes being strong still means letting someone stay." Ethan lowered his hand. "Is that what you want? To stay?" Ryan's answer came without hesitation. "Yes." Ethan's breath caught. Ryan stepped no closer, but his voice softened until it almost blended with the night. "Not as your shield unless you ask. Not as some alpha who thinks he knows what is best for you. I want to be the person you do not have to perform for. The person who sees you walk into that gym scared and still thinks you are the bravest man in the room." Ethan looked away, but the words followed him, settling under his ribs where shame had been sitting all evening. He wanted to reject them because accepting them would mean believing he was worth that kind of attention. Instead, he whispered, "I do not know how to do this." Ryan gave a small, aching smile. "Then we go slow." The flickering light above Ethan's car steadied for one bright second, turning Ryan's blonde hair silver at the edges. Ethan opened his car door, but did not get in. "Tomorrow," he said, barely louder than the breeze. "I usually come at 8. Ryan's smile changed, soft and surprised. "Then tomorrow, I will be here at 7:55. Ethan nodded, and for the first time that night, the silence between them did not feel like fear. It felt like the beginning of something he had not dared to name. At 7:55 the next evening, Ethan sat in his parked Honda with both hands on the steering wheel, watching the glowing blue sign of Atlas Fitness through the windshield like it was the entrance to a trial he had already failed once. The gym looked the same as always from the outside, glass doors bright against the darkening California sky, posters for summer memberships taped beside the front desk, college students moving in and out with shaker bottles and duffel bags slung over one shoulder. Nothing in the building had changed, and somehow that made walking back and feel harder. Ethan had spent the entire day replaying the locker room in pieces, the laughter, the broken scent blocker, Ryan's voice turning cold enough to silence everyone. Then Ryan standing under the parking lot light and saying he wanted to stay. By afternoon, the memory had begun to feel impossible, like something his exhausted mind had invented to survive humiliation. But the strip of white athletic tape around his wrist was real. Ryan had wrapped it there. Ryan had said 7:55. Ethan glanced at the dashboard clock. 7:56. His stomach dropped. Of course. He was foolish to expect an alpha like Ryan Carter to arrange his life around one nervous omega and a sentence said under parking lot lights. Ethan reached for the key, ready to start the car and leave before anyone saw him, when a gentle knock sounded on the passenger window. He startled so hard his shoulder hit the seat. Ryan stood outside in a charcoal hoodie and black joggers, blonde hair still damp like he had showered before coming, a gym bag over one shoulder, and 2 coffees in his hand. He stepped back immediately, lifting 1 cup in silent apology for scaring him. Ethan lowered the window a few inches. Cool air slipped in. "You are late," Ethan said, though his voice had no strength behind it. Ryan checked his watch, then looked genuinely horrified. "By 1 minute." Ethan tried not to smile. Failed. Ryan's expression softened as if that tiny crack of humor was something precious. "I brought coffee. Yours is iced. Oat milk, no sugar. I guess from what you bought at the front desk last week." Ethan stared at him. "You remember that?" "I remember a lot." The words were simple, but they filled the car more warmly than the coffee scent. Ethan accepted the cup and stepped out before he could lose his nerve. The moment his sneakers touched the pavement, he saw 3 guys from the previous night near the entrance. They were pretending not to look, which meant they were absolutely looking. His fingers tightened around the cup. Ryan noticed, but he did not move in front of him. Instead, he stood beside Ethan, exactly as promised. "We can leave," Ryan said quietly. "No," Ethan answered, surprising himself. His heartbeat was fast, but not wild. "I came to train." Ryan nodded once, proud without making a show of it. They crossed the parking lot together. Every step toward the door felt like pushing through invisible water. The front desk attendant glanced up and smiled like nothing had happened, but the weight floor changed when Ethan entered. Not dramatically. No one gasped. No one pointed. But conversations paused for half a second too long. A barbell settled into its rack with a dull click. Someone looked away too quickly. Ethan felt his face heat, and for one terrible moment, he almost turned back. Then Ryan placed his own water bottle on the bench beside Ethan's, not touching him, not announcing anything, just making their space shared. "Warm up first," Ryan said, his voice ordinary. 5 minutes on the treadmill, easy pace. Ordinary. That was what broke the spell. Not a grand defense, not a dramatic promise, just Ryan treating him like Ethan still belonged here. Ethan stepped onto the treadmill beside him and pressed start. The belt began moving under his feet, slow at first, then steady. In the mirror ahead, he saw them side by side, Ryan tall and calm, Ethan pale and nervous, both walking forward. For the first time, Ethan did not look away from his own reflection. The first 10 minutes passed with the strange, fragile quiet of a room pretending it had not changed. Ethan walked on the treadmill at 3 miles per hour, watching the red numbers climb 1 second at a time while Ryan matched his pace beside him. No one said anything directly. That was almost worse. Ethan could feel glances brushing over his back, light and quick, the way people looked at a cracked glass they did not want to admit they had broken. His blocker held beneath the white athletic tape, but every time his pulse jumped, he imagined the adhesive loosening again, imagined that clean, soft part of him spilling into the room for everyone to judge. Ryan did not hover. He did not stare down the other lifters or act like a guard dog with something to prove. He kept his hands on the treadmill rails, his breathing even, his presence steady as a wall Ethan could lean toward without actually leaning. When the warm-up ended, Ryan tapped the stop button and nodded toward the free weights. "Dumbbell press today," he said. "Nothing dramatic. Just control." Ethan followed him to a flat bench near the mirrors. The 25-pound dumbbells weighted on the rack, heavier than what Ethan usually chose when other people were around. Ryan looked at them, then at Ethan. "Your call." The choice sat between them just like the blocker had the night before. Ethan reached for the 25s before fear could talk him down. They felt solid in his hands, cold metal biting into his palms. He sat on the bench, feet planted, shoulders tight. Ryan crouched near his head, close enough to spot him, but not close enough to crowd. "Slow down before the lift," Ryan said. "Breathe in. Set your back. Then press." Ethan did. The first rep shook. The second was better. By the 5th, his arms burned, but the weight moved. In the mirror, he saw one of the alphas from the locker room watching from across the floor. It was the one who had laughed first. His name was Brent, Ethan remembered. A senior with a loud voice and a habit of treating every room like an audience. Brent muttered something to the guy beside him, and the guy glanced over. Ethan's focus slipped. One dumbbell dipped unevenly. Ryan's hand appeared beneath it instantly, not grabbing, not taking over, just there. "Eyes on me," Ryan said. Ethan found Ryan's reflection instead of Brent's. Again, Ethan pressed the weight up. Once, twice, 3 more times. When he finished, Ryan guided the dumbbells down to his knees only after Ethan lowered them himself. That was yours, Ryan said quietly. All of it. Ethan sat up, breathing hard, sweat cooling at the back of his neck. His arms trembled, but not from panic this time. From effort. Real effort. Something proud and unfamiliar lifted in his chest. Then Brent walked over. Ethan saw Ryan's posture change by a fraction, but he stayed where he was. Brent stopped a few feet away, rubbing the back of his neck. The confidence he had worn the night before looked thinner under the gym lights. Hey, Miller, he said. Ethan's stomach tightened. Ryan said nothing. That silence mattered. It left the moment to Ethan. Brent cleared his throat. About yesterday. I was out of line. Ethan waited for the usual excuse, the joke, the half apology that blamed the room instead of the person. It did not come. Brent looked uncomfortable, but sincere enough to hurt. You show up more than most people here. I should not have talked like that. Ethan's hands curled around the edge of the bench. His first instinct was to say it was fine, to make it easier for everyone else. But Ryan's words from the parking lot returned to him. You have that right. Ethan looked Brent in the eye. It was not fine. Brent nodded once. Yeah, I know. He stepped back and left without asking for forgiveness he had not earned. The mirror held Ethan's reflection again, but something about it had shifted. He still looked pale, still nervous, still smaller than most men in the room. But he did not look like he was disappearing. Ryan stood beside the bench, a faint smile in his eyes. Ready for another set? Ethan picked up the dumbbells before answering. Yes, he said, and this time his voice did not shake. By the end of the workout, Ethan's arms felt like warm rubber, his shirt clung to his back, and something inside him had gone strangely quiet. Not empty, not numb. Quiet in the way a room became quiet after a storm moved on and left the windows shining. He finished the last set with 25-pound dumbbells, lowered them carefully to his knees, and looked up to find Ryan watching him with that same steady expression Ethan was beginning to understand. Not pity, not possession, pride. It made Ethan look away first, but he was smiling when he did. Around them, the gym had returned to its normal rhythm. Treadmills hummed. A basketball game replayed silently on the television above the front desk. Someone shook a blender bottle near the water fountain. People glanced at Ethan less now, or maybe he had stopped counting every glance like evidence against himself. Brent kept his distance after the apology, and the others followed his lead. No one made a scene. No one whispered loudly enough to be heard. It was such a small mercy that Ethan almost laughed. Yesterday he would have called that survival. Tonight, it felt like space. Ryan handed him a clean towel from the rack near the benches. You did good, he said. Ethan wiped his face and raised an eyebrow. Good for an omega? Ryan's expression changed immediately. Good for you. The answer landed exactly where Ethan needed it to. He nodded once, pretending the words had not just rearranged something tender in his chest. They cleaned the bench together, returned the weights, and walked toward the exit without needing to discuss it. Ethan glanced once toward the locker room doors and felt his stomach tighten, but Ryan noticed and slowed. We can use the family changing room near the pool next time, he said. Less traffic, better air. Ethan looked at him. You already thought about next time? Ryan gave a small smile. I have been thinking about next time since last night. Outside, the air was cooler than before, the parking lot washed in gold from the overhead lights. Ethan's old Honda waited in the same far space, but it did not look lonely tonight. They stopped beside it, and for a moment neither of them spoke. The silence was different from every silence Ethan had known with Ryan before. Not accidental. Not hidden behind gym noise or locker doors. Open. Waiting. Ethan turned the water bottle in his hands. What you said in there yesterday, he began, then stopped because his voice tried to shrink. He made himself continue. When you said you thought about me every night. What did you mean? Ryan did not answer quickly. He looked at Ethan like the truth deserved care. I meant I worried about you. I admired you. I wanted to know what made you laugh. I wanted to be the person you looked for when the room felt too loud. His voice softened. And I meant that somewhere along the way, seeing you became the best part of my day. Ethan's breath caught, but this time he did not look away. That sounds dangerous. It can be slow, Ryan said. It can be whatever pace you choose. Ethan stared at him under the parking lot light, at the alpha who could have overwhelmed a room but chose instead to ask, to wait, to stand beside him. Slowly, Ethan reached out and took the sleeve of Ryan's hoodie between two fingers, not quite holding his hand, but close enough for both of them to understand. Ryan went still, then smiled like Ethan had given him something priceless. "Tomorrow?" Ryan asked. Ethan nodded. 7:55. Ryan's smile widened. "I will be here at 7:54. Ethan laughed then, soft and real, and the sound surprised them both. When he drove home that night, the athletic tape still wrapped around his wrist, he realized the thing that had changed everything was not that Ryan had spoken about him in a locker room. It was that, for the first time in years, Ethan had heard someone describe him as strong, and he had finally believed it.